If you feel like you're an idiot, dumb, or stupid for staying with your abuser, this video is for you. I'm going to clear up why the most intelligent, self-assured women still get caught in the narcissist's web. And I was there too. I felt like I lost the intelligence I always thought I had, especially when going back after the sixth time trying to leave. Tell me if these sound familiar. I wish I had left years ago. I don't know why I stayed. It was so obvious he was toxic. I'm such a fool for wasting my time. By the end of this video, those phrases and the shame that's attached to them will start to dissolve. Because when you're in it, it feels like you're tangled in something invisible. You might get a moment of clarity, like a light bulb going off, and then suddenly you're pulled back, either through hope, fear, guilt, or responsibility. It's complicated. And because it's complicated, I'm going to break this video down into 3 categories that explain why you stayed. And absolutely none of them have to do with lack of intelligence. The first category is ignorance is easier. You saw things early on. The mask slipped. The emotional invalidation started. The control and the coldness. But you still stayed. And now you look back and think, how did I ignore that? Maybe like me, you saw their toxic side quite early on. You know, they weren't wearing the mask for years on end. It only took a few weeks, but by then you were already hooked. That future that they painted was so damn bright that it outshone any red flags. Or maybe they emotionally neglected you from the start. It's not that bad. You're overthinking. But because in every other moment of the relationship they were doting on you, you dismissed it. You didn't ignore the signs because you're unintelligent. You ignored them because your brain was chemically attached to something else. So we know that love bombing floods the brain with hormones dopamine and oxytocin, and their future faking activates reward anticipation. And it's this intermittent affection that creates an addictive reinforcement loop. When your brain associates intense pleasure to a person, preserving access to that pleasure becomes your number one priority. Your nervous system learns connection equals reward, distance equals pain. So when the red flags appear, which is almost completely opposite to logic, your brain calculates maintaining this bond is safer than losing it. This isn't a weakness of yours, it's conditioning. Think about it. If someone gives you emotional intensity, affection, praise, validation, and the promise of a future, your brain doesn't see any danger with that. It sees reward, happiness, bliss, joy, security. And over time, that bond strengthens to a point where breaking it feels more painful than tolerating the mistreatment. So you tolerate. Not because it actually is bliss, but because to your system, the gaslighting, the emotional invalidation and manipulation is the more survivable source of pain as opposed to loss. And so if you're still thinking, but I knew better, I want you to ask yourself this. Were you acting ignorant? Or were you chemically attached? Because that distinction matters. This chemical bond doesn't make you less capable. It doesn't mean you're any less intelligent. It doesn't disqualify you from being the strong, independent woman that you were before them. It just means you were conditioned in a powerful cycle. And that conditioning leads directly into category 2. But just quickly, before we go any further, if part of you still feels attached to them or is yearning for them, even though you know how toxic they are, in the link in the description, you'll find the trauma bond interrupt method. And this is my free guide that will take you through the exact steps to stop the emotional spiral when it hits, when you find yourself longing for them or wanting to reach out. It's not about forcing yourself to just move on. It's about understanding and recalibrating what's happening in your nervous system so you can actually break free. So the link is in the description. Download the guide, it's yours for free, and start implementing the steps to immediately feel emotionally clearer and more grounded. Now let's talk about what happens next in this dynamic, which brings me to category 2, which is bye-bye rationality. Once the trauma bond forms, no matter how smart or intelligent you are, rational decision-making weakens. You might have been incredibly logical in every other area of your life, career, friendships, family, finances, but in this relationship, somehow your clarity disappeared. And I remember exactly how terrifying that was. You start thinking, why can I analyze complex problems at work, but not see what's happening here? Or why am I someone that can give my friends sound relationship advice, yet I'm the one staying with someone who's hurting me? And here's the thing, chronic stress alters cognitive functioning. Because when you're in cycles of love, withdrawal, conflict, reconciliation, your system is constantly dysregulated. You're in a state of fight or flight the minute you step through the door. Cortisol increases, anxiety heightens. The prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for decision making, essentially shuts down. Meanwhile, your survival brain becomes more active. And survival mode doesn't prioritize logic, it prioritizes attachment security. So instead of asking, is this healthy? Is this the best thing for my nervous system to be in this relationship? Your system asks, how do I keep this connection stable? That's why you negotiate, apologize, over-explain, minimize your feelings. Do you know how many times I ended up being the one apologizing to him for trying to leave and that causing him distress? When part of me knew it was the right thing to do, but there was a bigger part of me that felt it would be worse leaving than staying and trying to figure it out. And from a healed place, I can say that that wasn't stupidity, me apologizing to him. That was survival adaptation. Maybe you left after a huge argument. You're clear, you're done, it's over. And then hours later, or maybe days later, the guilt creeps in. What if I overreacted? What if he's hurting? What if I'm the problem? That's not clarity returning, it's your attachment system panicking. Or if you're replaying the moments where you went back and you're thinking, I cannot believe I did that. I just want you to pause for a second and realize that at the time, your rational brain was compromised by chronic emotional stress. That doesn't mean you lack intelligence. It means your nervous system was overloaded. And when rationality weakens, there's often something else that drives you staying. And that brings me to category 3, which is that your empathy was weaponized. You are empathetic. You can see people deeply. You can see pain beneath behavior. And you refrain from judgment because you know that there are always layers to people. And that is so beautiful. But in this dynamic, it worked against you. You know how you often hear empaths are narcissists' ideal prey. You saw his wounds, his trauma, his insecurity, his potential. And so instead of protecting yourself, you protected him and you prioritized him. You put yourself last again and again. So why is it that narcissistic personalities attach to these empathetic people? It's because empathy can often tolerate what a self-protecting person would reject. So in the start, when they said things like, you're the only one who understands me. I've never been with someone who gets me like you do. It's your empathy that hears responsibility. And so when they break down and cry victim after being the one that hurt you, it's your empathy that feels compassion. It is weaponized and working against you. Maybe like me, you rationalize their mistreatment with, he's struggling mentally at the moment. This isn't the best version of him. He'll get better. And over time, you can internalize this belief. If I just support him through this, things will get better. And it's these beliefs that keep you stuck far longer than logic ever would. You weren't staying because you enjoyed suffering. You were staying because you believed that your love had the power to heal him. You believed in your strength enough to support him when in reality he wasn't leaning on you, he was walking all over you. And this isn't foolishness on your behalf, it's misplaced loyalty. And so if you're ashamed for staying, now I want you to ask yourself this: was I stupid or was I empathetic? Because it's empathy without boundaries that equals self-sacrifice. And self-sacrifice over time erodes identity. Okay, so in summary, the 3 categories why smart women stayed. You were chemically bonded. Your rational brain was overridden by survival stress, and your empathy was weaponized against you. None of those reduce your intelligence. They explain your behavior. And when your actions have reasoning, the shame starts to dissolve. Now, if you're out of the relationship and thinking, okay, I understand why I stayed, but how do I actually break free from thinking about him and catching myself wanting to go back? Then the Trauma Bond Interrupt method is for you. The link is in the description. Download it and implement the steps so you can start seeing the physiological shift immediately that comes with beginning to break that attachment. Because understanding why you stayed removes the shame, but understanding how to break the trauma bond is ultimately what sets you free. And from one survivor to another, thank you so much for watching this video. Like and subscribe if you got something out of this, and I will see you in the next one.